Big box brands don't get the opportunity to do what I do, and so I relish in the fact that I can do that in terms of offering a product that is resolable, reconditionable, and so on. My name is Mathieu Vaughan, and I do a couple of things. I'm a personal trainer, but I'm also a shoemaker. I played hella sports when I was young, and I eventually settled on basketball, but I figured out pretty early on that I wasn't going to be a professional athlete. And so I started looking at other ways, other things that I loved about what I was playing, and I loved shoes. So I was always, into creative stuff. I used to make little like cardboard toys and play with friends based off of stuff from video games and stuff in prep school. That interest in creation and the concept of taking things from my mind and making them tangible has always been a big thing for me. That's what I went to school to do. It's what I kept doing even when I was out of school and so on. And even now that I'm not, I didn't exactly get the ideal job that I was looking for coming out of school, but it was something that I always loved. And so I managed to find a way to stick to it and eventually make a business out of it. So the name of the company is KCA, stands for Kingston Cordwainers Atelier. Cordwainer is just the classical term for a person who makes shoes from scratch. I wanted that element of traditionalism because it plays a big role in terms of how I construct the shoes and what sets my shoes apart from everyday shoes that you buy on the shelf. Construction is a major thing for me. One of the biggest issues that we have with the footwear industry right now is things ending up in landfills and things having short product lives. So one of the things that I built into my product from the ground up was that it would have an element of extendable lifespan. We once had a rich tradition of carrying our shoes and boots to the cobbler once we've worn stuff down, and the cobbler could just boom, slap on a new piece and you're good to go. And we lost that when the footwear industry, like most businesses, just went towards making money, selling more pairs, so on and so forth. And big box brands don't get the opportunity to do what I do, and so I relish in the fact that I can do that in terms of offering a product that is resolable, reconditionable, and so on. If we look on the bottom of the shoe and the inside of the shoe, most shoes would just have what we call like a strobo board. So it's like one piece that they stitch the upper to. But instead, in my shoes, the upper is wrapped around, glued to a separate board on the inside, and then stitched to that board. And the reason why that's relevant is when we take our shoes to the cobbler to get them resoled, the cobbler has to pour a solvent, into the sole of the shoe to separate it, the upper from the sole. Most of the times now, when you don't have what this stitch is, which is called a Blake stitch, then the solvent melts the glue that bonds the upper to the insole, and your whole shoe comes apart. Now that's common in a lot of shoes now, but this is a construction style that used to be used a lot in footwear from like the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it's still very popular in boots made and dress shoes now, but it's something that it's largely missed in sneakers, as if sneakers were just meant to be thrown away.
Why do you think it is that sneakers don't get that respect in the creative process?
I don't necessarily think it's about respect as it is about profit margin for most companies. Companies see a big opportunity to make a lot of money in footwear when they don't make the shoes with a particularly long lifespan, and that incentivizes people to go out and buy a new pair of sneakers more regularly. 2018, I had the pleasure of competing in the Pencil World Sneaker Championship, like 600 something entrants, and I made it to top 5. And so they flew me to Portland, Oregon, and I got to compete with a lot of other young, up-and-coming footwear designers who are really super talented people that ended up becoming good friends of mine to this day. And so that, for me, was a very deeply validating moment. I said, hey, not only do I have an interest in this, but this is something I can legitimately do. When I moved back to Jamaica after finishing school overseas, and I started to look at, all right, how can I use footwear as an art form to express something that is deeply related or inspired by my culture, my home, the history of our people, and so on. And that's what birthed this little rinky-dink design here. So this was called Tycon, and it was inspired by the history of or two of our ethnic groups that contributed to modern diaspora. So the Taino, the Aboriginal Indians that we had here, and then the Ashanti people who spoke the Akan language that were brought over here during the Atlantic slave trade. And I started thinking eventually, okay, how can I refine this into something that is not just aesthetically pleasing, but legitimately wearable? Because these are kind of crumply and, I'll admit, not the best constructed, but this is when I was getting good, when I was starting to get good at making shoes, because I could design for a while but not make.
What do you think is the biggest disparity between the Taikan and the shoes that you make now?
Construction, the construction techniques, the craftsmanship, the design has changed a lot as well, and the inspiration has managed to find its way through still, which is something I'm very proud about. So I currently offer basically two styles. The main difference between these two styles is going to be in the soling construction. So the one in my hand is what we call a wedge sole, so this is more of a boot. The soles are also sourced by Vibram and Margam, respectively. So Vibram and Margam are premier Italian-based sole manufacturers. If I didn't have to wait for parts, I could knock out a pair in 3 to 5 days. With waiting for parts, it's closer to 2 weeks.
And how much do they cost?
So the entry starting price right now is, the target price is $300 USD. They're unisex, and I have plans for more colors that are more targeted towards the specific genders. But the design itself is intended to be unisex, yeah. We have some really talented shoemakers out here, right? And the trade hasn't gotten, in my opinion, enough love. I would like to see the shoemaking industry locally come back a bit. The vision that I've had for my own personal business is not huge, like a one warehouse factory, 30, 40 employees, pumping out a couple thousand pairs a year. And I think that that's something that it's not just achievable for me, but it can be achievable for a lot of other people out here who have that creative vision already, and they're simply lacking infrastructure.